The note had only 7 rules. The first 6 were strange, but the last one made my blood run cold. If you hear a knock from the attic, no, you didn't. Tonight, we're exploring the corners of the internet where the lights are out, and the stories feel a little too real. Get ready to question every shadow and strange noise you hear. The internet is a wild place, but hidden in its endless depths are communities where people share experiences that just can't be explained. The subreddit No Sleep is one of those spots, a digital campfire where thousands gather to share tales of the unsettling and the terrifying. The one rule: everyone treats the stories as if they're 100% true, forcing you to suspend your disbelief and let the fear creep in. We went searching through the archives and found 7 stories that are guaranteed to stick with you long after this is over. From a bizarre set of rules left by a homeowner to a terrifying encounter on a lonely road. These are some of the internet's most nightmare-inducing tales. So turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin. Story 1: The House Sitter's List. A young guy, desperate for a summer job, starts posting flyers for house sitting. He doesn't expect much, but a friend calls him in a bind. His family's going out of town, their regular sitter canceled, and they need someone to watch the house. Job sounds like a dream. Check on the house in the morning and evening, make sure the doors are locked, and collect an easy paycheck. When he gets there Friday morning, his friend gives him a quick tour of a totally normal suburban house. As the family is leaving, his friend's dad hands him a sealed envelope. "Just a few extra things our usual sitter does," he says with a smile. The teen thinks nothing of it, pockets the note, and waves goodbye. That evening, he comes back around 6:45 p.m. Inside, he remembers the note. He opens it. This isn't a list of chores. It's a list of rules. Rule 1: arrive and enter the house at the exact same time each morning and evening. No exceptions. Rule 2: make sure all doors of any kind are closed. If you find a door open that you didn't open, close it, and stay out of that room for at least 5 minutes. Rule 3: if the house phone rings after 7 p.m., don't answer, even if it's our number. Rule 4: keep the alcove light and the master bedroom lights on at all times while you are inside. Rule 5: during your evening check, do not leave the house for any reason between 7 and 7:30. Rule 6: close the blinds to the backyard before you do anything else in the evening. He's sure it has to be a joke, just a prank his friend cooked up. But as he walks through the house, a weird sense of unease starts to creep in. He checks that the doors are closed and the lights are on. Then, he heads to the big glass door leading to the backyard to close the blinds, just like rule number 6 said. He pulls the cord, but for a split second, he glances outside, and his heart just stops. Standing on the lawn is a tall, shadowy, animal-like figure. It looks like an 8-foot-tall deer standing on its hind legs. As it turns to look at him, he sees 3 glowing purple eyes on what he assumes is its face. He doesn't wait to see more. He yanks the blinds shut, his hands shaking. He checks his phone, 7:17 p.m. And right on cue, the home phone starts ringing. He freezes, remembering Rule 3. The phone just rings, and rings, and rings, echoing in the dead silent house. He slowly backs away, his eyes glued to the rattling blinds, just praying for 7:30 to finally come. He never looked out that back window again. Story 2: The Smiling Man. For a night owl, a late-night walk can be pretty peaceful. At least, that's what one user thought. He had a habit of taking long walks between 1 and 2 in the morning just to clear his head. For years, he never had a single reason to be afraid. But one night, that all changed. He was walking near a park when he saw him, the silhouette of a man at the end of the street, dancing. It was a weird, jerky waltz, like something out of an old black and white movie. The man was tall and lanky, wearing an old-fashioned suit. As our storyteller got closer, he figured the guy was probably just drunk and moved to the side to give him some space. But as the dancing man drew nearer, the details of his face started to become clear, and they were just wrong. His eyes were wide open, staring straight up at the sky, and his mouth was pulled into a painfully wide, cartoonish smile. It was the kind of smile that's just an expression, with no happiness behind it at all. Totally unnerved, the narrator crosses the street to avoid him. Once he gets to the other side, he risks a look back. The man had stopped dancing. He was standing perfectly still, one foot in the street, facing him, with that same horrifying smile locked on his face. Now seriously creeped out, the guy starts walking faster, keeping the smiling man in his sights. After he puts about half a block between them, he looks away for just a second. When he looks back, the man is gone. Relieved, he keeps walking, scanning the empty street, and then he hears it, the quiet sound of footsteps right behind him. He whips his head around. The smiling man was there. He was following him, but he wasn't walking. He was taking these huge, exaggerated, silent strides, like a cartoon character trying to sneak up on someone. He was moving way too fast, closing the distance in seconds. Narrator was frozen solid. The smiling man stopped just inches from his face, still smiling, still staring with those wide open eyes. The narrator finally finds his voice and screams, "What the hell do you want?" The man didn't answer. He just turned, very slowly, and walked away. The narrator stood there, his heart pounding, watching him go. But just as the man was about to disappear around a corner, he stopped. His distant shape grew larger and larger. He was coming back, and this time, he was running. The narrator didn't think twice. He ran for his life and never looked back. He never went on a late-night walk again. Story 3. Headlights in the rear view. A woman was driving home late one night with her friend, and her young son was asleep in the back seat. They were on a desolate, hilly back road surrounded by dense woods, no streetlights, nothing. Shortly after turning onto the road, she sees a car pull out behind her. At first, she thinks nothing of it, but the car just stays there. She was driving carefully, watching out for deer, but the car behind her starts to tailgate aggressively. Annoyed and getting nervous, she slows down, hoping they'll just pass her. Instead, they get even closer, their headlights burning in her rearview mirror. Feeling a real spike of fear, she speeds up, trying to get to the main interstate as fast as she can. The car behind her perfectly matches her speed, glued to her bumper. There was no doubt anymore. They were being targeted. She decides to try and lose them, making a series of quick turns onto even smaller roads, but the car sticks right with her. Finally, she gets to a stretch of road that leads to the interstate. Her friend in the passenger seat is getting angry, ready for a fight. But with her son in the back, the driver just wants to escape. She lays on the horn, a long, desperate blast into the empty night. And it works. The car behind her pulls over to the shoulder, and its headlights switch off. Relief just washes over her, but it doesn't last. Why would they turn their lights off completely? It was pitch black out. She keeps driving, her eyes glued to the rearview mirror. For about 10 minutes, there's nothing but darkness behind them. They're almost at the interstate when suddenly headlights flash on right behind them again. The car had been following them the whole time, in the dark, just waiting. The terror was instant. She floored it, the engine screaming as they raced toward the on-ramp. The other car was right on their tail. Just as they merged onto the highway, the car swerved violently as if to cut them off, before speeding off into the night and vanishing. They never saw the car or the driver again, but the memory of those headlights suddenly appearing in the darkness was a chilling reminder of how quickly a lonely road can turn into a trap. Story 4. Autopilot. How much of your morning routine do you actually remember? Most of us run on autopilot, doing the same things every single day without really thinking about it. This story is so chilling because it's not about a monster or a ghost. It's about a simple, terrifying mistake. The storyteller talks about his morning. He wakes up, showers, gets dressed, grabs his stuff, and leaves for work. It's a habit his brain just runs on its own. But that's where the danger is. A tiny break in the routine can have devastating consequences because the brain, running on its usual track, doesn't even notice the change. One morning his phone alarm goes off, but he sees the battery is low. So instead of putting it in his bag like he always does, he leaves it to charge on the kitchen counter while he gets ready. That was it. That was the break in the routine. A tiny, insignificant change. He goes through the rest of his morning as usual. He showers, gets dressed, and his brain, now fully on autopilot, tells him he's done everything. It tells him his phone is in his bag, right where it always is. He drives to work, sits through a meeting, and it's not until his coffee break that he reaches for his phone and finds his pocket empty. And that's when the illusion shatters. He mentally retraces his steps. He remembers putting the phone on the counter. He remembers leaving it there. And then, a cold, sickening dread washes over him. See, the author mentions offhandedly that it's a sweltering hot day, and that on the drive to work, he thought he heard his young daughter, Emily, shifting in her car seat behind him to get out of the sun. His phone was on the counter. He'd forgotten it, which means his backup alarm, the one he sets to remind him to drop his daughter off at daycare on his way to work, never went off. The horror of the story isn't a monster. It's the dawning realization in that man's mind as he sits at his desk miles away, understanding that his daughter is still in the back of his car under the burning sun, all because his brain was on autopilot. Okay, let's all take a quick breath. These stories tap into some of our deepest fears, the unknown, the uncanny, and the horrible realization of how fragile we are. If these tales are sending a shiver down your spine, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel out and lets me know you want more of this. Now, let's get back to the darkness. Story 5. The 303 Whistler. Imagine living in a perfect neighborhood. Green lawns, friendly neighbors, kids playing outside. But this perfect little community has two strange things about it. Incredible good luck and a single, unbreakable rule. Every single night, at exactly 3:03 a.m., something walks down the street whistling a cheerful, simple tune. You can only hear it if you're in the living room or the kitchen. The sound starts faintly, gets louder as it passes the house, and then fades away. The residents have lived with this for years. They all know the rule, passed down by the neighborhood welcoming committee to every new family. You can listen to the whistler, but you must never, ever look. The windows are fitted with heavy canvas blinds and special locks. The father in this story locks them every single night. He explained to his son that people who went looking for the whistler, their luck changed. A black cloud would hang over them. He had newspaper clippings of car crashes, freak accidents, and ruined lives. Some people didn't die, but the light just went out of them forever. For years, the family followed the rule. The kids would sometimes sneak out to the kitchen to listen, but they never, ever looked. But one night, their cousin Holden was staying over. Holden was a skeptic. "Have you ever even tried looking?" he asked, taunting them, saying it was probably just some weird neighbor. As the night went on, Holden got more and more determined to break the rule. As 3 a.m. approached, he went to the living room window and started messing with the lock on the blinds. Narrator and his sister panicked, trying to stop him, but they were too late. Holden got the lock open just as the whistling began. The narrator tackled him, trying to cover his eyes, but he knew Holden had already seen something. In the struggle, the blinds were torn open, and for a split second, the narrator himself caught a glimpse of the street outside. But there was nothing there. The street was empty. The whistling stopped, just cut out. Holden was pale and silent. The next day, his parents picked him up. A week later, Holden's family was in a horrific car accident. Holden was the only one who didn't survive. The narrator now understands what the neighbors meant by a black cloud. He has to live with the knowledge that some rules aren't meant to be broken, and some things are meant to remain unseen, just whistling in the dark. Story 6. Headless Horseman. GIF. Our next story is a terrifying reminder that horror can arrive as a simple file attachment. A college student lived in a small rural town steeped in local legends. The most famous was the story of a headless horseman, but not the one from Sleepy Hollow. This was supposedly a local farmer from the 1800s who was decapitated by a piece of machinery. Legend said he still rode his horse through the misty fields at night, looking for his head. It was mostly just a spooky story for tourists. But one October, things got weird. The student was in a group chat with some local history buffs. One night, a user who had always been a bit of an oddball posted a single file. Headless Horseman. GIF. Bored and putting off a paper, our guy downloaded and opened it. It wasn't a GIF. It was a single, grainy black and white picture of a desolate, foggy field with a single gnarled tree. The quality was terrible, like an old photo. It was unnerving, but that was it. He figured it was a lame attempt to be spooky and closed it. The next night, though, the same user posted again. "Did you see him?" Then another file, Headless Horseman 2, GIF. Annoyed but curious, he opened it. It was the same image, same field, same fog, same tree. But there was a difference. In the distance, barely visible in the mist, was a figure on horseback. It was too blurry to see any details, but the shape was unmistakable. A chill went down his spine. He could have sworn the figure wasn't there before. This went on for a week. Every night, a new file. Headless Horseman, GIF. Headless Horseman, GIF. Each time, the image was the same, but the figure on the horse was a little closer, a little more in focus. The dread built with every picture. He couldn't see a head on the figure, and the horse's eyes seemed to glow faintly. He felt like he was watching something get closer, 1 frame per day. He tried messaging the user to ask what was going on, but got no response. On the 7th night, Headless Horseman, GIF, was posted. His hand was shaking as he opened it. The figure was now in the foreground, right in front of the tree. It was a man in old farmer's clothes, on a sickly-looking horse. He held the reins in one hand and a lantern in the other, and where his head should have been, There was nothing. The lantern light lit up the horse's face, its eyes wide with terror. But the light also lit up something else, that gnarled tree behind the horseman. It was the old oak tree at the end of the narrator's own street. He slammed his laptop shut. A few minutes later, he heard the sound of horses' hooves on the pavement right outside his window. Our story 7. Has your husband been standing still? This last story is maybe the most unsettling, because the horror isn't what you see, but the terrifying idea of what you don't. It starts with a knock at the door. A woman opens it to find a frantic, panicked stranger. "Is my husband here?" the stranger asks, trying to look into her apartment. Confused, the woman says she has the wrong place. But the stranger insists. "No, please, you have to listen," she begs. He stands still. Before the woman at the door can react, the stranger is gone. Baffled, she searches her apartment but finds nothing. Life moves on, but the weird warning sticks with her. A few days later, a piece of paper is shoved under her door. It's a crumpled envelope with the words, "Listen, please," written on it. As she picks it up, a whisper comes from the other side of the door. It's the stranger again. She tells an insane story. The first time it happened, her husband was standing in the corner of their home office, perfectly still, all morning. She hadn't even noticed him until she physically bumped into him. He was just there. Another time, he was squeezed between a glass display case and the wall, completely motionless. The stranger explains that he's been practicing. He can suppress his presence, blend into the background so you don't notice him. "He knows where your eyes land," she whispers, "and the spaces they slide over." Now the woman is terrified. The stranger on the other side of the door is trying to teach her how to see, how to flatten her vision and look at the world without expectation, to see the things that hide in plain sight. Later, she looks out her window and sees the stranger sitting in the park across the street, staring up at her apartment. Taking a deep breath, the woman turns around and sees him. He wasn't hiding. He was standing next to the dishwasher, bent at a right angle, his back perfectly aligned with the countertop. One arm was pinned to his side, the other held out at a weird angle. His face was pale, his lips glittering red, his eyes fixed on some distant point. He looked like a piece of furniture, an object, a shape in the room that her brain had simply edited out. A scream catches in her throat. The story ends with her scrambling out of the apartment, leaving all of us with a deeply unsettling question. How can you be so sure you're truly alone? What if someone is in the room with you right now, standing perfectly still, in a space your eyes just slide over? The best scary stories are the ones that feel like they could happen to you. They take normal situations, a new house, a late-night walk, a simple morning routine, and twist them into something terrifying. They play on our most basic fears, of the dark, of being watched, and of realizing we're not as safe as we think we are. These stories from Reddit are more than just ghost stories. They feel immediate, personal, and a little too real. Thank you for joining me in the shadows tonight. If you made it this far, you're braver than I am. If you enjoyed these stories, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next trip into the darkness. And now I have to ask, what's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you? Let me know in the comments below. I'll be reading them with the lights on. Stay safe out there.